we don't have enough time to take any more. So I feel like the three questions we have are covering a wide range of issues, from intergenerational trauma to looking at multifaceted levels of oppression, in terms of poverty, in terms of educational gap, and also looking more on Ethiopia. Since we are looking at the Horn of Africa, we will be looking at Ethiopia and addressing the first question that we have. I'll turn to Helena first.
All right. Thank you so much for asking that question, by the way, because we were just having that discussion prior to coming out here. Had it not been for the topic of the discussion about Tigray, of course, there's so much to be said about injustice happening all around Africa and Ethiopia in particular. And we were actually having that discussion prior about the crimes of, the guilt of the past government, not just TPLF, but the whole structure, and not just pointing on the people of Tigray or the Tigrayan portion of the administration, but the whole of it. And she talked about the Somali side, I talked about the Oromo side, and we both felt there was so much to be said on the injustice side of things. Both the Oromo people and the Somali were targeted in many, many ways, and that can be covered in 2-3 days. I don't think this panel will do justice. And I'm only focusing on the Tigrayan because that's the topic for today. But I do recognize your pain. I do recognize the kind of history that you're reflecting upon. And I don't want you taking my presentation in any way as the mouthpiece of that form of administration. Rather, I don't believe in equating the guilt of a government, the crimes of a government, the structure, not just only consisting of TPLF, but other groups, to what has been happening to the population today. The population is quite different from that. I would never allow for women of Ethiopia collectively, not just women of Tigray, but women anywhere, to face the kind of injustice that they're facing today. And it's in many ways to discount the kind of suffering that women faced prior to this. So I don't want you thinking I'm discounting that experience, and I thank you for saying it. Thank you so much.
Next question, maybe Edifozi on intergenerational trauma.
Yes. Before I talk about the intergenerational trauma, I also want to this question. I've spent years talking about what happened in the Somali region, and I've advocated for it enough, but we didn't have enough time to get into it, and I think it's only fair to mention the latest cases, which is what is happening to women in the Tigray region. But absolutely, what the EPRDF era did in the Somali region needs to be documented, needs to be addressed, and it needs to be found some ways of finding justice for it. With regards to, and it's going to be interesting to sort of try and find actors and hold them accountable, because it's going to cross ethnic lines. With regards to the intergenerational trauma, so I was talking about one reality, which is no matter what happened to you, you are expected to pick up the pieces and get on with life. Yeah? So there is a double standard when it comes to women issues. Women are raped because who they are, right? But they're not allowed to sit and talk about that because it's A, shameful, and B, the entire country collapsed. You can't talk about only women's issues. So we need to bring about the overall trauma of the war, but then again, not to rely on women to sort of say, don't talk about this, let's just get on with life. And I think things are changing now, because I know in the diaspora, women are talking about their experiences. I don't know much about what is happening here. And I know that what is happening in the Somali region is it's no longer hidden, because people have been tortured. Women have been tortured and raped in prisons. So there is now, I think, space to talk about it. Now, whether or not there is space for healing is to be explored. So I'm gonna, and the fact that this is going to be not only intergenerational but multi-generational, because you also are going to end up with kids who are growing up who might be children from a rape. But I think the psychological aspect of war in itself and the healing process that is needed for gender-based violence needs to be given space. And I think the decision makers and policy makers need to take that into account. So I'll leave that there. But with regards to even the privilege, some women are more privileged to talk about this. Poor women, displaced, internally displaced women might not even have the opportunity to be heard. And we need to take that class differentiation and access to privilege into account.
Thank you very much. Suad, any final words? We have a minute or so until the end of our panel. Any final remarks?
Even though tonight we're talking about violence against women in time of war, but there are so many issues that are now even standing as a post-war country, a peaceful country that still have the rape still goes on, and we don't talk about it, and we don't mention it. We don't have any sort of a counseling places or supporting women in terms of suffering from rape. So violence against women, even though the war is stopped, that doesn't mean the violence is stopped. And we have to always remember that, because we don't even the researchers, we don't have any research on that. We don't have numbers of how many rapes that occurs, even though it's frequent, as we know in the media. So as we are a Muslim country and people who are in faith, we have to really stand against the violence against women. We can't just ignore it because it's happening for unfortunate, maybe not the elites that are actually suffering from this. That doesn't mean that we have to stay quiet. We have to do something about it. There are so many other issues, women's issues, and I'm very saddened to say that today we've got no female parliamentarian in Somaliland who would take those issues to where it matters and debate about it and make sort of policies and acts and laws that goes against all those violence and all the unfairness that's happening in our country, in our community, because we do not have the representatives in where it matters. So I want to give this message to young ladies who are here. I want to encourage them that they get up and stand and shout the things that are going wrong in our community, and that's the only way that we can make it right. So that's my message tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening, and can we have one final round of applause for our panelists? Thank you.